Rajakumar Chandra. I'm the owner of Jyoti Store and Flower Shop. Yeah, Jyoti Store and Flower Shop started in Little India as a 5-foot way shop in 1960. And the last 58 years, it has grown slowly, okay, from a 5-foot way to a 5-story building now. And I think a lot of this work has been initially put in by my dad. His name is Murugaya Ramachandra, and he's 88 years old. He started this business in 1960. Actually, he starts early in the morning at 4:30, and the business goes until 9:30. And his customers used to be all local Tamils, and they are the one who used to be living in Little India, in the shop houses and all that. And they are the ones who used to have their families back home. But then they are here to earn their living, to send back their money back to India to support the family. They used to stay in these shop houses, and early in the morning they used to come to the shop after taking the breakfast in one of those famous restaurants here, the old restaurants, Ananda Bhavan, Komala Villas, I remember Mangala Biga, and some others which are no more now. After their breakfast, they used to pay monthly bills to them for their meals. Then they come over to Jyoti, okay, to buy their normal bitter leaves and nuts, okay, and for their morning use, they just put a few pieces into their mouth, okay, and they pack and they bring it along with them. And most of them used to work, their offices and used to be within near Little India, I would say. A lot of them worked in the bus company, Singapore Traction Company, which was in Mackenzie Road. Okay, they were drivers, conductors. Okay, and just down the road around Bukit Timah was the PWD. A lot of them worked there, including PUB and all that. So a lot of their workplaces were around the vicinity of Little India, and they used to stay around here. Okay, Jyoti slowly grew from a 5-foot way to slightly a bigger shop when more and more families started coming in from India to be with their husband who has been working here. And gradually, during the 70s, I think the more families were enrooted in Singapore. As such, Jyoti has to provide more and more items which are actually imported from India. A lot of imitation jewelries, a lot of religious items and all that. And that's how Jyoti actually grew. Okay, Tekka has been a place for all Singaporeans. The integral part of Tekka was actually the market, the wet market. And everyone all over the island has to come to Tekka market. And that's how Tekka actually started off initially. But not forgetting, this has been the place where the Indians has actually been there for 100 over years. As such, a lot of Indian shops also surrounded this Tekka, Serangoon Road. And in that was Jyoti out there for the service of the Indian population, which was growing. And slowly, lots of families started to come. Jyoti provided all the items to them, and we had to buy a building which was 5 stories to accommodate more and more varieties of items. The initial settlement of our Indians were more around Chulia Street, Raffles Place and all that. And slowly they moved into Serangoon Road area. And the initial days, it was actually from Dobby Court to Sleagy Road. That's the area that we find a lot of Indians, Indian traders. And slowly during the 40s, 50s, 60s, they started moving down Serangoon Road, what we see now. Okay, this is actually a second enclave of the merchants, especially all Tamil traders, Tamil merchants. And the earliest settlement were all Tamils from India who actually settled here to do businesses. As mentioned, when they moved from Raffles Place, Julia Street and all that, okay, the businesses slowly were all related to Tamil-related goods, because the people who were buying the goods were also Tamils, majority of them. So as a service industry, a lot of these businesses were doing more of goods related to Tamil what the Tamils wanted, right from the religious items to what the clothing they were using and so forth. But although this whole environment was very different during the 1800s, what Serangoon Road was around, like it was more of a cattle farm. Okay, we had Farrer Park, where we had the first aircraft which actually landed. The whole enclave was very different until during the 40s, 50s and 60s, the whole environment changed into more shop houses and so forth, which catered to more Tamils in this area who were living around here. The Tamil community actually grew from a very small population base to what is it today. And around the 40s, 50s, 60s, when a lot of the Tamils who came in from India did not really see Singapore as a place where they are going to be there. They also came in as expatriates. But the late 60s, 70s, there was a change, especially after the independence of Singapore, 1965. Okay, how Singapore started moving forward, the economy grew. So a lot of them thought that, okay, this is going to be their home. And when the families decided that they are not going to go back to India, and they thought that this is going to be their home, and that's where, the population really increased. As the population increased, the needs of the Tamil population were also increased. And more people wanted to live here, make this as their home. As such, Jyoti had to offer all the items for their requirement. From a business which we started as a 5-foot waste shop, okay, selling betel leaves and the requirements for their daily needs, some toiletries, powders and so forth, talcum powders and so forth. Slowly it moved. It moved to selling imitation jewelries for the ladies. Okay, slowly we started selling more and more of the Indian cosmetic range of products. I mean traditional ones like manjal, kungumam and so forth. Okay, which is actually turmeric for the face. Okay, they started buying more of henna powders. What we have, I mean, it's a different sales now, but during those days, everything was very small volumes, very small quantities, which we used to bring for the needs of them. Slowly, when the family started moving in, we had to sell a lot of Indian-related utensils for their cooking at home, for their home use. And as more and more temples started growing into Singapore, okay, and we had to bring in more of these religious products, statues and so forth. And those days they had Thaipusam and all these different celebrations also. So Jyoti has to cater to all these items. And more importantly, there are a lot of there were 3 major temples in Little India, and Jyoti's business, which started from selling betel leaves and all that, included flower making, flower garlands and all that. That was a very integral part for the Tamils. Okay, and the flower business became an integral part for Jyoti during the early 60s, I would say. Although the business was started in 1960, but only in 61, the late 61, that we started a flower shop. Because when people started asking for garlands, more of jasmine garlands and so forth, okay, and we had to cater for all those. As more temples, as the temples were in Little India, at least 3 temples were in Little India, and the flower requirements were also there for going to the temple, for putting it into their hair and all that. It's a part of the tradition. As for weddings, for every occasion for our Tamil community, from childbirth to the death, flower garlands was very integral. The requirements actually grew slowly as more and more families started living here. The volume of garland making as well as flowers, especially for their hair use, for all the engagements and all that, for all the festivities, okay, actually grew. Until today, Jyoti store is not being called by Jyoti store. it's always been called Jyoti Pushpakadai. Why? Because they knew that Jyoti actually were very famous in delivering garlands and all that for all the events, for all their functions, for every Tamil family in Singapore. I had 3 sisters who are elder to me, and the eldest sister's name is Jyoti. And that's how my father actually named his business when he started in 1960. And I think my father's wish is always to give the best education. Although he was very, very intelligent, but he did not have the opportunity to go to school. Although when he came to Singapore in 1948, at that point of time, he still went back to school to do night classes while he worked during the daytime, until he worked all through to become the chief librarian of Standard Times at that point of time. And unfortunately, during the 1958 Standard Times, the newspaper was closed down. And he was unemployed for 2 years until he started his business in 1960. So he has always told us, you can do whatever you want, but you got to study. And my sisters were the role models, okay? They went to university and so forth, okay? But after my national service, I did apply to Singapore U, but then I didn't get a place in the course which I always wanted to do, engineering. But then at that point of time, computer science was something very new in the market, and it was, the word computer just started during the late 70s and early 80s. And what is it really about? And that's where with my army friends, okay, some of them were going abroad to do other different studies. So I wanted to do something in computer science, which was very technology related. And for that, they told that your maths must be very good. But I always had distinctions for maths. Okay, my maths was actually very good, my numbers. So I applied to a university called University of Windsor in Canada, and I got a place. And I was there for 4 years, the first year, but then I got a Canadian government scholarship, and I moved to the University of Manitoba, which I completed my honors degree in computer science. I came back to Singapore in 1985. I left in 1981 and came back in 1985. After I came back in 1985, I had a scholarship to go back to do my master's. My intention was never to take over Jyoti, which was actually a very small business at that point of time. But the name was a very powerful name. Everyone knew Jyoti Pushpakadai. But then the business was small. Being overseas educated, studied in Canada, I got a degree, honors degree. I got a scholarship to do my master's. My idea to come back to Singapore was for attending my sister's marriage and being here for the next 2-3 months until the term starts again in September. When I was back, my dad asked me, so are you going to work or do you want to take over the business? What intention do you have? And I told him that I'm going back again in September to do my master's in computer science. And what happened, since you're going in September, shall I go for a pilgrimage for about 2 months to India? And after that, you can decide what you want to do. So he just left the business to me and he just left to India. But coming to Jyoti was actually a hobby for me. From my young days, from 9 years old, I've been coming to the shop to help my dad in the business. It has always been a hobby, tying garlands, learning how to make kontamale, flowers for the hair and all that. And I used to do things so fast that I used to be a record breaker in making the flower kontamale, they call it. Okay, within 5 minutes I can do a kontamale. So all this actually motivated me to really be a hands-on person, but never to take over the business. I never thought of that. During his absence, okay, when he handed over the business to me, then I realized how challenging a business is. The business was very challenging, so I decided to take over the business from there on. So when my dad came back from his pilgrimage, he asked, so when are you leaving to do your master's? I told him, no, I'm not leaving. I'm going to take over this business. It was very challenging, and I've been meeting a lot of Tamil-speaking customers, okay, who wanted so many different things that we can't offer. And I want to build this business to a level that every Tamils in Singapore will come to Jyoti for every item they need. And that is how I actually grew Jyoti. You know, for every festivities, okay, they have to come to Jyoti. Okay, and for every festival to grow, that was Jyoti also. Okay, people came to know more about Pongal celebration. They came to know more about Deepavali celebrations. Okay, all these celebrations actually grew bigger and bigger because we got new citizens who came in from India, all parts of India, okay, into Singapore, okay, and they brought in their religion, their culture, their traditions, which actually integrated with the locals, okay, as the festivities and the celebrations grew bigger. I think Jyoti's business also actually grew together.